You think you're tough? You think you could handle the Wild West? Well, here's the brutal truth. If you woke up tomorrow in 1870s frontier America, you'd be lucky to survive until sunset. Forget everything Hollywood taught you. We're about to time travel to the real Wild West. And trust me, you're not ready for what's waiting. Picture this. Your eyes flutter open, but instead of your comfortable bedroom, you're lying on a straw mattress, crawling with bedbugs. The smell hits you first, a nauseating cocktail of human waste, rotting meat, and unwashed bodies that haven't seen soap in months. Welcome to your first day in the Wild West, where your survival clock just started ticking. You stumble outside, and the assault on your senses continues. The streets are rivers of mud mixed with horse manure and human sewage. There's no running water, no sewage system, and definitely no deodorant. But here's where your 21st century mindset becomes your secret weapon. You understand germ theory, something most frontier folks didn't. The number one killer in the Wild West wasn't gunfights or Indian raids, it was disease. Cholera, typhoid, and dysentery claimed more lives than all the outlaws combined. But you know something the pioneers didn't: the connection between hygiene and health. Here's your survival strategy. While everyone else is sharing drinking water from the same contaminated barrel, you'd insist on boiling your water. When others are eating meat that's been sitting in the sun for days, you'd know to check for signs of spoilage. Your modern understanding of bacteria and infection could literally save your life. But let's talk about food. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner consisted of the Holy Trinity: beans, hardtack biscuits, and coffee so weak it was basically brown water. Fresh fruits and vegetables? Only if you were incredibly lucky. Scurvy was rampant because nobody understood vitamin deficiencies. Let me tell you about Sarah Mitchell, a real pioneer woman who kept a diary during her journey to Oregon in 1873. On July 15th, she wrote, "Little Emma took sick with the fever. No doctor within 200 miles. We can only pray and give her willow bark tea." Emma was 7 years old. 3 days later, Sarah's next entry was just 4 words: Emma joined the angels. This wasn't unusual. It was everyday reality. 1 in 10 people died on the Oregon Trail, and children were especially vulnerable. But with your modern knowledge, you might have recognized the symptoms of typhoid fever and known to isolate the patient, boil all water, and maintain strict hygiene protocols. Now, let's say you need to travel. You're looking at 2,000 miles of unmarked wilderness with no GPS, no weather forecast, and no rescue services. The Oregon Trail was literally lined with graves, one every 350 feet. But your smartphone-trained brain gives you advantages. You understand navigation principles, weather patterns, and resource management. You'd know to travel in spring when water was plentiful, to follow river valleys for easier terrain, and to pack extra salt for food preservation. While others relied on unreliable guides, you'd use the stars for navigation. Knowledge that was once common but forgotten by many pioneers. Here's where your modern mindset becomes revolutionary. You understand the power of organization and systems. While frontier towns operated in chaos, you could introduce simple innovations that would seem miraculous. Imagine establishing the first health clinic in a mining town, not with modern medicine, but with basic hygiene protocols, wound cleaning techniques, and quarantine procedures. You could revolutionize food safety by introducing proper smoking and salt curing methods you learned from cooking shows. Your business sense could make you rich. While everyone's digging for gold, you'd sell pickaxes, work boots, and preserved food to the miners. You understand supply and demand economics that would make you the smartest entrepreneur on the frontier. But even with all your advantages, nature itself was trying to kill you. Flash floods could appear without warning, washing away entire wagon trains. Summer temperatures reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit with no air conditioning, no refrigeration, and limited water. Winter blizzards could trap you for months with no way to call for help. The infamous Donner Party of 1846 got snowed in and resorted to cannibalism to survive. Your modern understanding of weather patterns and seasonal planning could help you avoid such desperate situations. Even if you survived the diseases, the journey, and the environment, you still had to deal with lawlessness. Sheriffs were responsible for thousands of square miles with no communication systems. Justice was often delivered at the end of a rope. But here's your ace in the hole. You understand conflict resolution, negotiation, and de-escalation techniques. While others reach for guns, you could talk your way out of trouble using psychology and communication skills that wouldn't be formally developed for another century. The real Wild West wasn't about heroic cowboys and dramatic shootouts. It was about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges with primitive tools and limited knowledge. The pioneers who survived weren't necessarily the toughest or the fastest with a gun. They were the most adaptable, the most prepared, and often just the luckiest. The lesson? Never take for granted the knowledge, technology, and systems that keep you safe today. Modern medicine, food safety, communication, and transportation are miracles that previous generations could only dream of. So the next time you're complaining about your Wi-Fi being slow, remember Sarah Mitchell and Little Emma, and be grateful you live in an age where survival isn't a daily battle. If this journey through the real Wild West opened your eyes to how incredible our modern world really is, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment below. Would you have survived in the Wild West? What modern convenience would you miss most? Let's discuss in the comments, and I'll see you in the next time-traveling adventure. Imagine this. You wake up, open the cabin door, and a blast of icy wind almost knocks you over. The year isn't 2025. It's 1886, the deadliest winter on the American frontier. Your firewood is almost gone. The snowdrifts are higher than your roof, and survival isn't guaranteed. But what if you, yes, you, could bring today's knowledge back in time to outsmart the cold? 1. The deadliest winter on the frontier. The winter of 1886 to 87 wasn't just cold. It was catastrophic. Temperatures plunged to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Blizzards buried entire towns, and cattle herds froze standing up, their bodies forming walls of ice across the plains. Imagine stepping outside and seeing thousands of lifeless animals where your wealth once stood. Families like the Johnsons in Nebraska faced nights when frost crept through cabin walls and water froze solid inside kitchen pots. Neighbors only miles apart lived completely different fates. Some endured, others never saw spring. Here's the lesson. Nature doesn't negotiate. Those who survived weren't necessarily the strongest, but the most resourceful. They understood how to stretch supplies, share warmth, and adapt when plans failed. And this is where you have the edge. With modern knowledge in your back pocket, you'd already know strategies they couldn't dream of. Which brings us to the next key. How to hack frontier survival with techniques 140 years ahead of their time. Second, modern knowledge versus frontier struggles. Now picture this. You're back in 1886, but you've brought with you the wisdom of the 21st century. While your neighbors pile on buffalo hides, you know the secret of layered insulation, trapping air pockets to create warmth. With just wool, straw, and animal pelts, you can mimic the principle behind modern winter jackets. You'd also improvise a solar heat collector, dark stones placed under cabin windows to absorb the weak daylight and release it through the night. To others, it looks like simple rocks. To you, it's life-saving science. But the real advantage? Recognizing hypothermia. While many settlers mistook shivering for strength, you'd know it's the body's final alarm. By teaching your family emergency warming techniques, skin-to-skin heat sharing, heated stones rotated through bedding, you'd not only survive, but inspire others around you. And it's here we find one unforgettable story. 3. Lessons from survivors and your role in history. Take Mary Johnson, a homesteader who saved her children by heating stones in the fire and tucking them into their beds each night. She didn't have survival guides or thermal blankets, just grit, instinct, and creativity. Her small act became a model others followed, proving that even the simplest tools could rewrite fate. If you stood beside her, armed with today's knowledge, imagine how many more families could have made it through that winter. You wouldn't just be surviving. You'd be a lifeline, turning tragedy into resilience for an entire community. That's the true lesson of the frontier. Survival is never about facing nature alone, but about how your ingenuity can protect the people around you. And the question remains, if history threw you into that frozen storm tomorrow, would you rise as one of its survivors or one of its stories? And remember, every era of history had storms, struggles, and impossible odds. But armed with the right knowledge, you could be the difference between life and death. If you want more time travel survival guides, lessons that turn the past into your secret advantage for the future, hit subscribe and join me on the next journey through history.